31 states are currently failing to abide with the letters of the Constitution when it comes to financial autonomy for the legislative arm of government. Now, the last time you were here, we talked about autonomy for the judiciary because we talked about the valedictory speech of the retired Justice Datijo. So what's your take on that? What's your take? Let's start from there. What's your take on, 31 states not complying, some not fully complying, some not complying at all with the letters of the Constitution?
I think it's a terribly sad statistics we have of commitment to constitutionalism. When the Constitution creates responsibilities, it does not create options.
Okay.
Non-compliance with those responsibilities is a serious issue. It should divest you of the capacity and authority to function in the public sector. So if 31 out of 36 states are not implementing what is necessary, we're not talking of paying bonus to somebody. We're talking of the funds required for running the legislature, which is the first assembly, the center of democracy. And you can be sure that you will not have a healthy democracy. Definitely, you will not have a functional legislature. So there will be inadequate supervision of governance and the executive that is directly involved in governance. It will be very inadequate. It also means that the executive can, at will, roll the legislature around their fingers. That does not give a good signal for a state. It does not signify a healthy democracy. Definitely, in an environment in which you have such statistics, democracy will not be well and alive.
Now, where did we get it wrong? What does the Constitution say about the three arms of government when it comes to finances or the distribution of allocations? What does it say? Because it looks like the governors are not willing to let go, of the finances of these other arms of government.
Yeah, that's the point I was making. If the Constitution requires that the three organs of government should be autonomous, especially with the last alteration of the Constitution dealing with the legislature. So it requires that the three arms be autonomous. And how you find that is that it charges the funds for running the three arms of government to the consolidated fund.
Okay.
Yes, the National Consolidated Fund.
That's are you talking about FAC?
Some of the FAC is the federal agency that determines distribution of resources.
Okay.
Of funds for the various units of the country. I'm talking of the National Consolidated Fund.
Okay.
Established for the country where all revenues accruing to the country should go in, except revenues that are by law required to be paid into a different account, and from which no expenditure will be made except as approved by the legislature through passing of budget and all that. So, if that is what the law says, non-compliance with it should be a serious issue. It requires that those funds be charged to the account, meaning that they are to be paid out. They are to be paid out. The requirement for the day-to-day running of those institutions ought to be paid out directly. Now, that of the state goes to the state. And Section 121 requires that the state should disburse those ones straight to the institutions to which they belong.
So once it gets to the state, sorry, let me get it right. Once it gets to the state government should not hold it for a minute, but rather should send it straight to that arm of government.
It's for our transmission to that arm of government. Remember, it's charged on the National Consolidated Fund. So the state is only receiving it for the institution, and it ought to go to the institution. Now, Section 121 that sets up the state consolidated fund says all revenues due to state should go in there. And revenues other than those that are specified for a particular place must be budgeted and approved by the legislature before they can be spent, must be appropriated before they can be spent. Now, that's coming from the National Consolidated Fund for the judiciary, and the legislature are supposed to pay that to the head of those institutions, for running of those institutions. It's different from capital expenditure and some other expenditure that the state may want to do within its legislature. That is different from the running cost of the legislature, which is coming from the National Consolidated Fund.
Okay.
It ought to be paid directly to those agencies. So the state consolidated fund is just a transmission point through which it passes to go to where it is going.
All right, Prof. I would have to.
It becomes unconstitutional to hold it back there and to make a fresh budget.
Okay, I would have to pause you. We've got a commercial break. We've got a commercial break now.
That's all right.
Are you ready for incredible deals on the latest tech gadgets?
who is on the phone, Professor Ritchard Nwokocha, Professor of Law, Rivers State University, and a constitutional lawyer. Welcome on the show, or welcome back on the show, Prof.
Thank you, Carl.
All right. So before we went on that very long commercial break, you were explaining what the Constitution says about financial autonomy for the other arms of government, apart from the executive.
With respect to the state, if you look at section 121, subsection 3, it's a short section. It says, and just permit me to quote, any amount standing to the credit of the House of Assembly of the state and judiciary, meaning of the state, in the consolidated revenue fund of the state, shall be paid directly to the state bodies, respectively. In the case of judiciary, such amount shall be paid directly to the heads of the court concerned. So, such money is not money that is subject to budgeting by the state before it will be paid. The consolidated revenue fund of the state is the fund established by the Constitution for all monies due the state to go into, including monies coming from the consolidated revenue fund of the nation at the center in credit of the legislature and the judiciary. Because all monies going to the state come into the consolidated revenue fund of the state, those monies are released to the state through the consolidated revenue fund. So section 121 is saying that such monies that come into the consolidated revenue fund from the center, specifically for these institutions, should be directly transmitted to them. So they are not part of the money that the chief executive of the state will prepare a budget for approval by the House of Assembly.
So now let me paint a picture. In the last administration here in Rivers State, we saw SUVs being bought, houses being built, complexes being built. That's not supposed to be the process. Correct me if I'm wrong.
That can be done. That is if you are not doing it from funds due the judiciary, for example,
all right,
or due the legislature. If you want to do some capital investment in the judiciary of your state or in the legislature of your state, you can do so. Those are the ones you put into your state budget. But the money for the day-to-day running, the salaries of the officers in those places, the requirements for they are running those offices and doing their work are coming from the center because they are charged to the consolidated revenue fund of the federation. Those are supposed to go directly to them. If you now want to dash them additional car or buy cars for them from the state or build house for them from the state, you can do so from the state budget. But you must not touch the one they require for their day-to-day run.
All right.
That is supposed to simply pass through the state account into the specific institutions.
Now, I asked that question because it is said that Rivers State is partially implementing financial autonomy for the legislative arm of government. Now that we know what the Constitution says, you've told us what Section 121 says about financial autonomy. Why do you think the governors, including Rivers State, are refusing to fully implement this section of the Constitution? Is it because of, I don't know, from your understanding, why is the situation the way it is? And what can we do to stop it? Should we amend the Constitution? If we should amend the Constitution, the governors will still have a role, right? So tell me, what can be done, and why is it done the way it is done?
So once to amend the Constitution, the governors will not have a role.
Okay.
Except the legislature in the state allow them to control them.
Okay.
Because the governors do not vote. It is legislatures that vote to approve from the state legislatures. But back to your question, my first take on why constitutions get taken for granted is that they are backing but they are not fighting. In any circumstance in which you have crimes going unpunished, many more investors are likely to invest in that crime because it will be profitable and it has very little risk. So because governors are doing this and getting away with it, You can be sure that they will not be perturbed about taking the Constitution for granted and sitting with levity, something as important as independence of the judiciary or the legislature. So my first take is, because we are not punishing those who are doing it, it will continue.
But how do you punish? How do you punish the government, the state, the executive government?
There are, for instance, two very easy ways to take care of this situation.
Okay.
You are starving the judiciary of this fund. You are starving the legislature of this fund. The Constitution puts a duty on you to transmit their money to them, and you are holding it back. It's a misconduct of a very gross character. I can't imagine gross misconduct that is more grave in character than that one.
Okay.
So it's an impeachable offense.
Interesting.
If you impeach one or two governors for not doing it, all governors will sit up. Impeachment is conclusively in the hands of the legislature and the judiciary. In the hands of the legislature, not the judiciary. And an administrator called the chief judge of the state, who function in his capacity as administrator of the court as the chief judge. So if the legislature wants to be independent, it's actually in their hands. If they cite the governor for impeachment for violating the constitutional duty of paying money due to the legislature and judiciary to them, that is not a difficult thing to confirm. The fact that he is holding back the money and he's not releasing it is all the evidence required. It is the legislature that will determine whether that offense is grave enough as a gross misconduct. And the chief judge will appoint citizens who will simply have to look at the question: is he holding back the money? Has he been transmitting it as at when due, as soon as it comes? What they need to establish is that the state holds back the money and budgets before they spend it as they like. Once that is done and established, the governor is gone. So the primary tool for dealing with this issue is in the hand of the legislature, the state houses of assembly themselves. I think that is the easiest and most basic form of enforcing the Constitution. The next thing that could have been done, the last administration tried at the center by coming up with the executive order 10. But you know the problem with it, because the Constitution does not permit the center to pay directly, but says it should pass it through the state consolidated revenue fund. The Supreme Court struck it down that they overreached. But what will happen if the center refuses to release money to the state because it has failed to comply with the constitutional requirements? They can contest it in court.
Interesting.
And the court can make specific order in that respect.
All right.
So I think these are two ways in which this thing can be dealt with, from the center and from within the states themselves.
So the strike
relies on
the strike that is now embarked upon by PASAN, that is the Parliamentary Staff Association of Nigeria, in 20 states, will not yield anything until the legislative arm, wields the power that it possesses. Is that what you're saying?
That strike is a patriotic protest by citizens, law-abiding citizens who are not happy that state executives are taking the Constitution for granted. But there are people, remember that the strike is to put pressure on the government. So what if the government goes on? Because after all, workers at the executive units are going on.
All right.
What is going on at the secretariat, works at the government house and other places affecting the executive are going on. So what if the pressure does not pressure them enough, quote and unquote? What if it does not mount enough pressure on them because it's not affecting them? They can continue.
All right.
The primary tool is in the hand of the legislature. The Constitution puts it in the hands of the legislature. State. The House of Assembly is the supervisor of the governor of every state. And it is the body that has the duty to punish where necessary the governor of the state for violating the Constitution.
All right.
No other person.
Okay.
But then,
I would have to, we would have to stop the conversation right now. There is another commercial break, but thank you very much, Professor, for your time and for educating us on the show.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Do have a good evening. To you listening, when we come back, I mean, it's not going to be a long time, the break that is. When we do come back, I want us to talk about this because Rivers State is on that list, although it's not that bad in Rivers State. However, Rivers State is part of the states that have not fully implemented, financial autonomy for legislators. And I suppose, even if the report did not carry that, I suppose also for the judiciary as well. So how do we, after listening to my guest, how do you think we can tackle this issue? Because if you go back to the drama that happened last week, you may be able to tie it to some kind of financial control by, you know what I'm talking about, if you're, if you're very keen on political conversations. But a commercial break coming up. To stay tuned. When I do come back, we'll talk some more. I am Kala Dakurubatabo, and this is Hard Facts on 92.3 Nigeria Info.